Hi, my name is Pablo Requena, and in this video we're going to see how to fill the grain on this guitar, but using pumice powder as a tool to fill the grain with. Some time ago I did a series of videos about how to polish, how to French polish a classical guitar, and in that series you saw how I was using epoxy resin, which is a completely different technique and a completely different product to be using. There I explain how to do it and all the benefits that you have when you use epoxy resin, but there's also quite a few people who would like to know how to do it in a more traditional way without using any kind of nasty products and chemicals and so on. So what we're going to do is that this guitar, I've got it pretty much at the stage where I'm starting to do the polishing, even though you can see it's not finished at all. Really, we have the neck is completely, I still got a lot of work to do basically. But I like starting the polish a little bit earlier on before I finish, because that way I give the chance to the grain filler to really dry up really quite hard, and then also to shrink, so that by the time I start doing the French polishing, then I'm much more forward in the whole process. Also, it's a good idea for me because the soundboard is not completely clean yet, but I don't really want to clean the soundboard because it's so pale, and so I don't really want to get any dirt into it while I'm still working on the rosewood and so on. And there's a lot of sanding to do, a lot of preparation to do, and it generates quite a lot of quite strong dust, very red, dark brown, and everything gets very messy. So this way, now that I'm starting polishing, I'm not going to be bringing any dirt into the soundboard, which I really want to keep it very, very clean. So what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be using pumice powder to do this job. And pumice is a very fine, the pumice powder comes from the pumice rock, which is a volcanic rock, and there's a few different grades of pumice that you can get. What you need is to get the finest one you can find, which I believe is 4 zeros, and basically it does look like this. It's just a very fine white dust, which all you need to do is to make a pouch like this one, which all I'm using is a cotton cloth. Make it into a square. This one is maybe about 200 millimeter squares. Just put some in the middle and make it into a ball, and once you have it like that, I'm gonna need a bit of masking tape to keep everything together. And what will happen is that as I'm using this pouch of pumice powder, really all I need to do is to bang it against. Here is probably a bit too much, but you can see it comes out very easily through the cloth, and it's a really good way to use it. So we're going to be using pumice powder to fill the grain with, but the pumice powder on itself is not a grain filler. This is very important because we're not aiming to fill the grain with the powder itself, for a few different reasons. One of them is that you can see it's very white, and you don't want to have white spots and white bits in the grain that they get trapped underneath the polish and then they'll never go. So you know that's not going to work. Pumice powder, it's a grinding agent, and what it will do is that it will help to cut the surface of the wood, and it's that dust that you create from the wood itself that, together with the powder and together with what we have here already, which I'm going to tell you in a moment, it will also pick up the pigments, the natural pigments of the wood, and that paste that it's created with the help of the pumice powder is what we will be using to fill the grain. So at the moment, what I've done so far is that I've done one session in the back, and I've cleaned it up a little bit and so on, so that you can see what it looks like in a moment. I've done one session of pumice, I'm working on it without doing any cleaning afterwards. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment as well. But I'm going to show you this side. Now, in the side, all I've done is to apply a couple of coats of shellac, the same that I would use for French polish later. With a brush, I've applied it carefully not to get the polish into the lines. And then also what I'm going to do is that I'm going to get a little cloth, and with the same shellac I'm going to seal the edges, because I want the white lines to be completely sealed. I've done this before I did any of the other sections here. So just get a little bit of polish all the way along, and you want to make sure that you don't move the cloth as you're doing it, because you don't want to get what you could get from the rosewood into the white. So you can see this is the red that comes from the rosewood of the binding, and you want to make sure that it doesn't jump into the white lines. So that's why you need to do it quite carefully. And now you go for a fresh part of the cloth to do the other side. So now I'm going to go and do the front side. And the same, you just hold it in between your fingers. Can you see the corner is kind of in between my two fingers there? That way I know that the cloth, when it picks up the red, is not going to go into the white line. And now it was a bit uncomfortable to keep going there, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pick up another area to be able to complete that side, which I didn't do. Now this is not coming out as dirty as it would normally do, because I've already done some work on this, and here it's only a little bit. But when this is fresh and you haven't got any whatsoever, you can pick up quite a lot of red, and you'll see how important this is. So now that we know that we have some protection on the white lines, it means that as we're working on the side or in the back, whatever area you're working on, you know that you might get, well, you will get some red in the bindings, in the white lines. But because we already have clear polish into it, you know that the red that you might pick up from the wood is not going to go in too deep into the white. So it will be quite manageable, and it will be quite easy to clean up later on, which is what we will see in this side. Let me show you. There are areas where, I don't know if you will see that very well in the camera, but like here, for example, this is a real mess, and you can see how the mix of wood dust with pumice powder and everything is gone over, and you really want to be able to clean that, which is a lot easier to do it if underneath this stuff there is a little bit of clear polish. But we're going to see that in a moment. What we're going to do is that we're going to do a little bit of grain filling. So all you need to do is to use the same rubber that we normally use for polishing, and now we only need to use alcohol. We're not going to use anything else because there's already some shellac in the surfaces. So we are going to load the rubber with alcohol. You're probably going to use more than you normally would, but you don't want to go over the top because you don't want to have runs going everywhere. And then we also, let's do this side, we're also going to do a few splashes of pumice powder. You can see there's quite a bit in it. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to start working it in. I don't want to go into the white lines at all. I want to try to avoid them, but nevertheless there's still going to be areas where I would go on a bit because it's kind of hard to avoid, but also because you really want to get as close as you can to the edge because you want to feel the grain everywhere. So you know, you just have to be mindful that you don't really want to overwork the white areas, but nevertheless you want to get as close as you can. I'm going to put a few more drops of alcohol and a little bit more pumice powder there. And I don't know if you can hear it, but there's this kind of grinding noise that it comes as you're working. And you don't have to go on and on and on and on, but you have to see that you're actually getting like resistance in your rubber. So you need to kind of apply a little bit of pressure, and it's not, you don't have to be too forceful, but it's not super smooth. That's how you know that you're actually melting away or melting up the polish that it's already in the wood, and it's been forcibly mixed with the pumice, and it's also rubbing into the wood that is here. So we actually want to get through into the wood, and it's at that point when that mix can get into the pores. So we're going to move forward a little bit into a different area, like there. So we use a little bit more alcohol than we normally would, because what we want to do is to actually melt the polish that it's in the surface, to mix it up together with the dust that we're getting as we get through into the rosewood, and that's why your rubber, it goes red. That is a good indication that we actually cutting the wood itself. So I'm just going to get a couple more drops like that, and you don't have to go on and on and on. You have to just move forward and just bring it into the light as well to see how you're doing. And you can see, well, I don't know if it will show you, but I can see that the grain is starting to fill up. I still have a few areas where it's not so full, but I'm going to leave it for now. I'm going to move on, and then I'm going to come back to it and do it in a couple of sessions. The other thing that you might find, you can see the cloth in the rubber broke over here, and it will end up breaking in the area where you got more friction, because in the same way that it's cutting the wood, it will also cut and damage the cotton. So all you need to do is to just open it up and just change it into a different area. Here you can see I already have a few holes here, so very soon I'm gonna need a new rag, but that doesn't matter. The main important thing is the content of the inside of the rubber, and all you need to do is to just change it into a different area where then you can carry on working. So you'll see here, this is sort of clean, and you will see how very soon it's gonna come out red. So that's a good indication that we've melted through the polish, and we're also cutting into the wood. And it's the alcohol, also the alcohol is going to help to reactivate the pigments in the wood to color in a natural way the mix that we are creating. So yeah, you can see that's already red. Now the waist is always a little tricky. To be honest, the easiest part to do is the back, but I think it's always a good idea to show on the sides, because if you're able to do the sides, then you will be able to do the back as well. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next section. And you can see that the white lines, and they're getting a little dirty, but nothing over the top, nothing that I can manage to clean later. If we didn't seal the white lines first, then you'll find that actually these pigments will go quite deep into into the maple, that they're made of maple, the white lines, and then it'll be really hard to clean them up, and then they'll end up, it doesn't matter how much you clean, they'll end up being a bit pinky, and yeah, they just don't look as good. So it's a good idea to try and keep this nice and crisp. Now up this area, this is one of the areas where it's difficult to polish the guitar because it's quite hard to get into the corner. Here we're going to be doing more carving, so I don't mind if I get a little bit of pigments into the heel itself, because I'm going to be cutting wood from there. However, I'm going to try to not to get too much, but you want to have a rubber that has got a nice point over here, because that means that then you can get into it. So it's quite important to be able to get into that corner there. It's very easy to neglect it, and then it will show up. And one of the key things when you're polishing your guitar is that the first places any professional or any people who understands about this will look, the first place they look is how well you polish this area, how well you polish next to the fingerboard, and how well you polish around the bridge. Those are kind of key areas that you need to pay good attention to make sure that you get a really top-notch polish. Right, I'm nearly done. I'm going to do just a little bit here, and then I'm going to show you how to clean this up. I'm going to rest it on my shoulder. It's always good to find a good steady way of holding the guitar. Right, so I think I'm going to leave this like that. This is not done by any means. I can see, yeah, there's areas where I need to do more, but you know, it's going in the right direction. You have to keep an eye on it, and with the reflection of the light, you'll be able to see actually if the grain is still open or not. It might take a little bit of time to train your eye to kind of recognize what you're doing in here, but you know, the thing about this technique is that if for any reason you think that it's all done, and then you go into polishing and you find that there's a, you know, the grain is still a little open, you can always go back and do more, and you know, go back a couple of steps without, you know, any harm done, and then fill the grain a bit more, and then carry on working. So you know, if you're not sure in the beginning because you're not sure what to look for, don't worry. This is something that you need to really learn with experience, and the more you do it, the more confident that you will get. Right, so I'm going to leave this side alone. It's a little bit sticky, so ideally I shouldn't put it into here too much, but I'm going to have to be able to show you what to do in the other side. Now the other side I've done already, and I don't know if you can see very easily, but there's, you know, mainly in the center section there's hardly any polish. It's all gone matte, and it's in these areas where there's more build-up, and there's even areas where there's a bit of red in the white lines. The build-up really is that mix of shellac, polish, pumice and dust and so on. So we want to get rid of all of that, because we don't want to leave that underneath the polish that we're going to be doing here, which is what I've done here already. And after I've done it, I just put a little bit more polish into it, and then I can see that there's areas where I'm going to have to do a little bit more grain filling, but it's okay, you know, a little bit at a time. So how do you approach this to get this back to be clean again, so that then we can do a little bit more? Well, I'll clean it, and then I'm going to put a little bit of polish, then I'm going to see what it looks like, and then that will show me if I need to do more work or not, and so on. But before we can do that, we need to sort this out. So what I would do is to get, I think I have a blade somewhere here. Where did it go? Here you are. This is basically a Stanley knife blade, very easy to find, and you know, available pretty much everywhere online or in a tool shop. And what I'm going to do is that gently, without cutting too harshly, I'm just going to start working on this edge here. And you can see this dust that I'm getting here, this is no wood. This is this mix that we have been working with. And the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to try to do it carefully so that I can get all the way down to the wood without opening the grain again, because if I really go crazy I can open the grain with this and then I'm deceiving the point of all of this and I'll be chasing my tail here. So what I want to do is to clean the white lines as well as removing all the excess of product that hits on the edges. So just gently scraping with a fresh blade so that you got a good edge, and you can see this is kind of pink and so on. So we're gonna carry on and we're gonna do all the way. This is a little time consuming, but the reality is that if you pay attention to these things and give it the time, later on the polishing process will be a lot easier, and you will also have a really good result at the end with very nice clean lines. So you can see this is cleaning up really well. I've got a little bit of dirt still here. I need to kind of shape this binding still a little bit more, which I will do when I carved all of this off. But I would like to get this cleaned up. So here I'm just going to have to do a little bit more work, and even if I open the grain in this area, which I can see I'm not, but even if I did, for me it's more important to make sure that this is clean rather than having lumps or bits with red in it. So that's okay like that. So all we need to do is to carry on all the way along. This is going to be a little bit time consuming, so I'm not going to be doing this on this video completely, because otherwise this is going to be too long and it's just going to be boring. But it's very simple. You just need to carry on working all the way along, and then if you see that you still have some mix of the mix that we've been doing in these areas, then all you need to do is get yourself a sanding block with 240. This is 320. Let's get 240 here with 240 sandpaper. 240 is not really coarse enough to be opening the grain too quickly, but it will be good enough to be able to remove all of this. And what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to try to stay away from the white line, but removing as much of this as possible. And you also want to be working with a cloth so that you can clean this up as you need to, basically until you can see that you remove all the, I have still a little bit more here, so I can do a bit more. And here's when you can see really how the grain is and if it's really full or not. And I can see this very tiny, I'm going to use this to point at it. So we got very tiny shiny spots. That means that the grain is still a little bit open. And then we got other ones that are completely matte. That means that they're completely full. And this is very full, but because there's still this mix that we've been working with over the top. So we need to cut a little bit more in this area to get rid of all of it until we can see the specks of the grain like that. Now we're not going to go on to remove all these shiny bits, because if we did, we could end up opening the grain. So we're going to leave it until all of this is removed, and once all of this is removed and looks like this, then we know that we come back to the wood. But you can see the grain is starting to look like it's ready to go. So let's do a little bit more and then I'll show you in a second. Also I can see that I'm getting more and more red dust, which means that I'm cutting the wood, and I don't want to be cutting the wood too much because I don't want to open the grain again. So I think this is pretty much as I can do here. Let me see. Yeah, there's a little blob in there, so I'm going to remove that one. Yeah, and then looking at it closely, I can see the wood. I don't see any of the leftover buildups that we had, and I can see that the grain is nice and full. There's a few tiny shiny specks, which it means that those points, it means that the grain is a little bit open in there, but eventually as I work on this, you'll see them going. So, you know, it does take a bit of time. Be patient, enjoy the process. It's, you know, get in the zone. You can see we're getting a bit of dirt in the spruce, but I don't mind that because the spruce is not ready yet. That's why I want to do this now rather than when the spruce is completely clean. And then when all of this is completely done, just make sure that your white lines are completely clean. Then you can apply a very small amount of polish with a brush. All you need to find is a good quality artist brush so that the hairs are very thin. Let me see if I can open this up. Here. And then just go very carefully. I'll do a little bit here. Don't touch the white line, just go very near it. You can see you can actually do it very closely without touching the line. And if you touch the line just very quickly, just with your finger, you clean it up. But can you see my finger? I've picked up more red into it. So it means that because I've gone back to the wood, I can get more pigments into the white lines. But if you put a little bit of shellac on the rosewood, carefully not to touch the white line, then you will be able to seal the red, and then when you put a little bit more polish on the white lines, then it won't pick it up so much. And you know, you just have to pay attention to the edges because you want to keep them clean. So I think this is as much as I can show you. This is going to take a bit of time, and you know, you need to be methodical and work through all the rosewood components, also in the head. I've done that already. And then you can start doing a little bit of polishing and then leave it there and carry on, finish your guitar, complete everything you need to do. This guitar needs a few more jobs. As you can see, I need to work on, I'm going to position the bridge. I'm not going to glue it on. I will position the bridge in place, and I will put a little bit of masking tape to protect the area where I will be gluing the bridge later on, which means that then I can also polish the soundboard without any obstacles here. That way you know that there's going to be really good polish all the way around the bridge. And yes, of course, I need to work on the neck and get everything ready, but by the time the guitar is ready, then everything that we've done here, it could have been a few days and it would have a really good chance to dry and to shrink, which is what you want. You want it to shrink, because what you don't want is to do the polish too quickly and then find that a few months down the line, as even though it looks like it's dry, it will dry further, and as it dries more, the thicker part of the polish, which is the place where the grain is being filled, it will shrink and it could show up again a little bit more. No big deal, because you can always go back and do a little bit more polishing and sort it out, but it's a good idea to do the best you can, because once the guitar is going to the client, you don't want to be asking the client to, I can have the guitar back to, especially this one is going to China, so I don't think he's going to want to send it back too quickly. So I want him to have the guitar really, really well polished so that he's happy with it and not have any problems in the future. So this is as much as I'm going to show you with this now. Just a quick reminder that recently I launched an online course that you can buy on, well, it's not an online course, it's a course that you can buy online. It's all available in my website, which is called www.onlineguitarmakingcourse.com. And there I don't cover the French polishing process, which is for free on YouTube, but there you will find that there is a series of chapters, I think there are 26, where you can find all the information that you need to be able to build a guitar as good as this one. And no step missing, going into every single detail, everything that you might need to know. So check it out.